This is one of the worst movies of all time. Not because I'm a Native American getting on a soapbox, since practically every movie about Native Americans draws criticism from Native Americans if it's not told how they want it to be told. But because I'm not an Osage Indian, and because this movie quite simply is one of the worst movies of all time. As a one-off statement, this film should have been a mystery. Just because we know how the Osage members die, it doesn't mean the movie should be lazy and messy and nonchalant about the murders. I've never seen a movie spoil itself. Even Lifetime movies and Scooby-Doo episodes know how to reveal the murderer at the end, or at least until many relationships and backstories have developed and murders have happened. But this movie revealed the murderers in the first 10 minutes. This made the final 3 hours painstakingly boring. Now I can sit through a 3-hour movie, cue Lord of the Rings. And I can sit for 3 hours plus watching a mini-series. But halfway through this movie, I find myself giving up. Molly is the only remaining Osage in her family at the halfway point, meaning the other Native American women barely get any screen time. It also means we can't be expected to care about their deaths, since we literally saw nothing of them except their pitiful situations typically 2 minutes before their death. And so Molly's needlessly shown with a voiceover soliloquy saying racist things about random white people who she looks at and walks by. The scene is almost a mockery of her, since meanwhile she's walking with her white husband. Now having a white husband isn't the issue. But everyone told her, while she sits alongside her dying sister who has a phantom illness and also has a white husband, not to trust white men who want her money. They then stereotypically refer to people as animals, calling white men rats, rabbits and coyotes. Yet she goes and marries an alcoholic cabbie played by Leonardo DiCaprio, who's one of the biggest perpetrators of the murders. Seeing Molly weakly ask white men who are behind the murders if they know anything about the deaths for the literal whole movie was embarrassing. And to top it all off, Molly's sister Rita married the husband of their recently deceased sister, who was poisoned by this husband. Crickets. Even if she weren't poisoned by her husband, how disgusting can you be? Are they that desperate for white meat? Even though the real Molly looks like my dad and just might very well be desperate for a man, aren't they rich? What's the point of being a rich person of color transcending generational trauma and the poverty curse, when you take 100 generational steps back and marry the ones who cursed you, and then marry the spouse of your dead sibling? That's not sloppy seconds, that's incestuous corpse cadaver seconds. And this is a true story. How can we feel bad? They were truly this blatantly shameless and stupid. And then there was a meeting with Osage leaders and members discussing how to avenge the murders and prevent more by keeping outsiders out. But surprise surprise, guess who's also in this crucial meeting? Robert De Niro, playing Bill Hale, the mastermind of the murders. I'm sorry, but I have to laugh. And he's the uncle of Leonardo's character Ernest, who only married Molly to secretly kill her with her trust. I'd probably feel a little bit more empathetic about the situation if the story was told less pitifully. I wonder strongly, but briefly, if Lily Gladstone knew that all her hard work would have been for nothing, and that her character would ultimately be edited to look pathetic with no mystery or grace behind their deaths. Shame on her if she signed up knowing how it would be edited, that we'd facepalm for 3 hours at a less than heroic Molly with a pointless appearance by Tantu Cardinal as her letdown of a Mother Lizzie. Didn't both Gladstone and Cardinal make bank from reservation dogs? Don't tell me they were still this desperate that they took on this insult of a production. Also, DiCaprio is an acting veteran. But he's never had a role this demanding. This is the longest movie he's been in. And the first half of the movie is the length of a regular feature-length film at 1 hour 35 minutes. In that first half I noted the only redeeming quality of this movie is his performance. And I was just beginning to say that he needs an Oscar nom. But right in the start of the second half, I noticed at first as a joke to myself that he was starting to sound like Jack from Titanic, if Jack had a speech impediment. But when this poorer accent consisted, it became less of a personal joke and it became more of an actual joke. At the same time, De Niro's accent became almost ridiculous at times. De Niro hasn't played a villain since I've been alive, and every villain he's played has had a stereotypical, typecasted mafioso New York accent, not a down-home frontier redneck cowboy accent. So even though De Niro is also an acting veteran, he's an amateur when it comes to this role, and it started to show, sorry. Also, Lily Gladstone must have had the time of her life having Leonardo between her legs, but for someone who is actually Native American, when she speaks an ethnic tongue in the film, she sounded worse than when De Niro spoke in ethnic tongue. I think Disney's Pocahontas had less silly-sounding Indian dialogue than when Gladstone spoke. That being said, accent aside, De Niro is eternally hilarious and he somehow managed to make me laugh in this bleak, gray, characterless movie, yet nothing about this situation was funny. So I'm not sure why his character was made to have a redeemable quality. Perhaps to show his influence, but he wasn't influential. He was violent and cash-bribing. Someone without any redeemable qualities at all could orchestrate a crime like this with mere violence and cash. Still, when De Niro's character Hale sat bedside to Molly as she lay nearly dead, and De Niro patronizingly spoke Osage to her with an encouraging fist, I am sorry, but I laughed. Also, Brendan Fraser playing Hale's lawyer effortlessly made me laugh. I almost found myself agreeing with him trying to thwart the trial that could bring the Osage tribe justice. He made the most out of a small guest role. Scorcese is definitely not throwing DiCaprio nor De Niro under the bus with their roles, however. He is obviously intending on their performances to be the gut and bones of the movie, despite their roles being evil. So I felt weird. For instance, one of their kids dies suddenly, and I don't even know their name. But Molly's reaction is an eye-rolling literal 2, maybe 3 seconds long. Whereas DiCaprio's reaction, while his character is locked away on trial for what he did, has an award season beckoning 2, maybe 3-minute performance. This film did less for Native Americans than, again, Disney's Pocahontas. At least Pocahontas, though the film was a total lie, humanized Indians and showed their culture and dedicated the soundtrack to their perspective. I felt closer to Pocahontas's pet raccoon Nico than I felt close to all of Molly's family put together. And I mean that. Just think. Whatever happened to sweet precious little Nico when Pocahontas went to Britain? Poor thing. And I hate raccoons. Also, the movie dragged out scenes and rushed others, and it doesn't hurt me to say that the important scenes were rushed, while arrogantly vapid scenes for cinematography purposes were dragged out. For instance, there's an incredible kill count, but each murder, even the ones done with loud gunshots, is underwhelmingly sudden or back-to-back, and I didn't even remember or realize that half the people who died, had died, until they retroactively spoke about it an hour later. So I wonder why the film is over 3 hours if that runtime was so underutilized where it really counts. It's only over 3 hours to boast the $200 million budget, and I doubt it will make enough money to even break even. That kind of budget could solve every Native Indian's problems. There's also a scene where Molly sobs, it's just like Tulsa, after shameless backstabber Rita's house is blown up. No, sweetie. It's nothing like Tulsa. See, the arson massacre that happened in Tulsa against, as it was called, Black Wall Street was not an inside job of husbands and sisters sleeping with sisters' husbands, it was a sudden hateful ambush. The murders of Molly's family was nothing short of tragedy, but the biggest tragedy is that they brought it upon themselves. I'm not quite sure what Scorsese thought he was doing, greedily pulling at multiple civil rights straws here and tossing the Tulsa thing in, but it was also embarrassing that they know they have to try this hard to legitimize the purpose of the movie. I can see it now. Juxtaposed with the Tulsa massacre of Black Wall Street, a family of Osage members suddenly died. That's like saying, juxtaposed with the COVID pandemic, a child stops eating their boogers. One can create a thesis that they are related occurrences, but naturally they are not. The worst bit might be the ending. Normally with biographical nonfiction or fictitious history films, the closing scene includes archival footage and photography and press clippings. Instead, Scorsese thinks impressing his peers means more than dignifying the real-life figures and closes the movie with a scene of a radio show mockingly narrating the aftermath of the murders and the trial. Yes, I can agree with Scorcese that this story is borderline a joke, especially when you take race out of it. But to rub it in people's faces with this silly and bizarre scene where actors mumbled like caveman as they read Osage members' words about the trial over sarcastic violin music, is just foul. So, anyway. 50 or so murders. 1,000 or so on-screen characters. 3 hours of film. $200 million budget. 100-year-old story. A whole family wiped out. Boils down to 3 main men, 2 who will be nominated for Oscars if it's the last thing Scorsese makes sure of. That's all you need to know. Also, I don't know why they tried to make this a love story. I doubt there was any love in the actual relationship, and anyone who wishes otherwise is sick for trying to romanticize this, whether it's DiCaprio playing the role or not.